Great afternoon. Great afternoon. Thank you for joining us. We're going to get started momentarily. We want to give everyone time to log on. I'm your host, Vicki Overton. Thank you for joining us. We're just going to give it about another minute or so as we have our streaming guests joining us.
Welcome in, everybody. Welcome. Guys, go ahead on and click on share and start your watch party. We definitely want to get the word out. We have awesome guests, awesome panelists today, and we want to share it with as many people as possible. So go ahead and get your watch party started.
About one more minute, and we're so excited to get started. Panelists, were you all able to start your watch parties? Awesome. And again, you can find us on Yes, which is YES, the number 2, HH, through Facebook. And as you scroll down to our posts or our events, you'll see this one. It should be streaming now. All right. And so you want to be sure to get your feedback. So you want to turn your volumes all the way down.
Turn the volume all the way down.
Yeah, as far as on your, hey, Ms. Tamika, as far as on your watch party, or if you have like another device going on, not the one that you're streaming through, but if you have another device on, you want to go ahead and turn the volume all the way down.
Oh, I have no device on.
Perfect. Okay. All right.
We got to figure out how to make our headphones work on these things. But I want to plug it in, and I think you need special shit.
Perfect. So we'll go ahead and get started. Greetings. I'm your host, Vicki Overton.
And I'm Natasha Lewis.
Thank you for joining us today. We have an awesome panel discussion ahead of us this afternoon. We're really excited to be hosting Gravity Talks, Mental Health and Protests to Power. We have an awesome panelist set up this afternoon. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. As we all know, a lot has been going on. We can name the coronavirus. We can name the current societal injustice and unrest going on. And so we felt it was time to go ahead and speak out and let you all know how Gravity Talks felt about everything that's been going on, and also bring the experts to the table. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves. So again, I'm your host, Vicki Overton, and this afternoon with me, I have, Miss Tamika. If you don't mind, tell the people who you are and what you do.
Hi there. Hello, everyone. My name is Tamika D. Mallory, and I am one of the co-founders, along with my son, Lennon, of an organization called Until Freedom. I am a 25-year activist, organizer. Some people call me a leader. And I have been working in the area of social justice and fighting for disenfranchised people. It's my lifelong work. It's my mission. I'm a mother of a 21-year-old young man who, he's never, after 2 years old, he's never seen his father because his father has been dead. And so we have together grown up, and I've been committed to this work, not just because I'm, a lifelong activist, but because as a Black mother, I think we all have a responsibility to really get in and work as hard as possible. I want to apologize to everyone, because in the background you will hear a little bit of noise. We're doing a photo shoot today, and unfortunately, when you're an activist and you're moving quickly, it just is what it is. So please bear with us. Thank you. So I'm happy to be with everyone.
Awesome. We're excited to have you, Ms. Tamika. And by the way, you look beautiful.
Thanks. This is strictly a photo shoot because I'm still in my quarantine, no makeup, sweatpants, and I had to put these braids in because I was looking but dusted.
Well, you clean up well, honey. You clean up well. All right. And so with us also this afternoon, Mr. Myson. Tell the people who you are and what you do, sir.
My name is Myson Lennon. I am a self-proclaimed raptivist. That's a rapper and an activist. I am the co-founder of Until Freedom, and I work for Tamika Mallory. I've been doing hip-hop, 20-year veteran in hip-hop. Started out in the field of hip-hop. I was signed to Def Jam Records in the year of 1998, signed by Chris Lighty, who was one of my mentors. Shortly after I signed my deal, I got incarcerated. Ended up spending 7 years out of a 7 to 14-year sentence in prison for a crime I actually never committed. Came home, and my whole goal was to stop incarceration. You know, while I was in prison, I realized that the faces were black and brown, and they were young black and brown males that kept coming in and out of this prison. So I wanted to come home and change that. I seen 16 to 17-year-old boys come into prison with 20 and 30 years. And I realized that it was disproportionately our people. And so my focus was really to change the way that we viewed, situations and the way that we viewed things in our community, because I realized a lot of us were being in prison because we believed in lies. So I came home to dispel myths and started to do hip hop, but with a different mind state. After I got a lot more conscious. And as I grew conscious, I think Trayvon Martin was the thing that got me into activism. I was in Florida during the reading of the verdict of George Zimmerman. And I remember being in a hotel room crying like I was a 5-year-old kid, because at that time, my son was 15 years old. And I kept saying, what do I say to my son? And from then on, I became a lot more active. And that's where the activists came in. Then I met with Tamika Mallory, who introduced me to Carmen Perez, who was running Harry Belafonte's organization. And we've just been doing the work ever since then. So I want to say thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you again for joining us. So also we have Dr. Ashley. Tell the people who you are and what you do.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ashley Preston. I am a lecturer in African American Studies at the University of Florida. I've been at UF for about 2 years teaching African American Studies. I became interested in African American Studies more so as a child. I really loved history. I have my doctoral degree in history and my master's from Temple in African American Studies. And so I think African American Studies is definitely one of the most relevant disciplines for what we're experiencing in this moment. It's interdisciplinary, and we basically study all things Black. We're looking at people of African descent throughout the Caribbean, throughout the world, and it is very much a discipline that is interested in solving the issues that are surrounding African Americans. And so it is something that is very engaged in community work, and it's not simply just in the classroom. We are also outside of the class, and you'll see African American Studies at the forefront right now as far as scholarship that's starting to come about. So I love what I do. I've been teaching in higher ed for about 8 years and a proud graduate of Howard University. I am a mom to a 1-year-old boy. His name is Carter, and I'm also a wife to Marcellus. And everything that is going on right now, these are the things that I've taught my students about for years. And to see these things happening and to see their responses and the fact that they're so prepared for this movement because they have studied it before now, it's just really inspiring, and I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us, Ms. Dr. Ashley. So let's go ahead and dive in.
Yes, we're gonna definitely, guys. We're gonna start with just kind of talking about mental health and your connections to mental health. This is a lot. We do have a lot to cover today, but I will say this: with everything that's happening right now in the world, it's just a lot going on, and it all combines and just collects and comes together. So just want to start off with possibly my son, if you could just tell us what your connection to mental health is.
Well, I think we all in this moment, I think we're all connected to mental health. We don't have any choice. I think with this pandemic and with the epidemic that we're dealing with, which is racism and white supremacy, like if you realize that, mental health, just being on quarantine for 90 days, the first 90 days of quarantine, I seen the moods change. I felt my whole mind state just dwindling. I felt tension everywhere. I seen it with my children. My mother was calling me stressed every day, crying, just reading the news, and then you started to see how it started to dwindle over into the community. And I just think we all have some connection to mental health. If you don't see how serious mental health is, then I don't know what to say. One of my good friends, Charlemagne, talks about anxiety and talks about mental health. He's real big on mental health, and I've been reading his book, and just to see how we don't even realize that certain things that we're dealing with are mental health issues. We've normalized abnormality in our society. We've got comfortable with trauma. We just got comfortable, especially as Black people. We got comfortable just living through trauma and thinking it's normal. And I realize now, just basically throughout the pandemic, just watching my kids, just watching my wife, I'm a father and a husband, is watching how they react to these things, and how it's mentally straining, and how the fear creates mental health issues, how the trauma is creating mental health issues. So I just think in these times I think mental health is probably the most important conversation we need to have after we're talking about racism.
Definitely. Now that's powerful. That is powerful. And so you feel that because it's such a heavy topic, along with what's going on with racism, and do you feel like that one is kind of promoting the other, or causes the other one, causes you to react differently? If your mental health is a certain state, you'll react differently towards racism.
I believe so. I believe when we just talking about racism and what we're seeing now during this uprising is years of trauma that it has inflicted mental health on Black people, and our children they've got it the most because they've internalized it. When we talk about the Willie Lynch, and they talk about how when you train a slave and beat a slave, it will last hundreds of years because it'll go into the fear, and and that trauma will go into the children. Like we're watching that. I'm literally watching the youth internalize mental health and trauma that they don't even realize where they're lashing out from. But we know it because we actually experienced some of it, and our grandparents knew it, and it just is dwindling down, and it's a uprising because we're tired. There's a stage where you realize that it's no more. And when you think about where we are, and you think about how serious mental health is, like really serious. Because I'm not crazy. Like I don't need to see no psychiatrist. I don't need to speak to nobody. But I realize that I do. I realize that I have issues. I have mental issues. I have never identified. Most people who have mental health issues haven't been diagnosed because they don't think they have them. So I think right now we should be talking about mental health very seriously.
Definitely. Now, Dr. Ashley, since you are, a specialist in African American studies, what is that link between African Americans and mental health? Some historical information.
So there's actually a lot of scholarship about I just sat on a dissertation committee. Shout out to Dr. Ariel Lewis, who just finished her doctoral degree, but her research was on historical trauma. And she looked at all of these different instances in history, and she actually had interviewed several people to ask them how they were impacted by these events and things that had happened historically. And I think a lot of times we don't know how we're impacted until we really sit with ourselves And I think that's the good thing that's coming about throughout this quarantine, is that we're having a chance to sit with ourselves and to kind of process some of these things. So as the brother was saying, we don't even know we have any issues with mental health until we get that quiet time. It's almost as if sometimes people don't like to sit down and be quiet because things start coming up and you start feeling a certain way. But I would say, just from a historical perspective, there's a woman by the name of Joy DeGruy, who, and I hope I'm not messing up her name, but she talks about post-traumatic slave syndrome. And she talks about how these hundreds of years of oppression are still impacting African Americans even today. I mean, and I always use this as an example for my students. When you think about slavery ending in 1865, as we just celebrated Juneteenth, think about the fact that if something happens at a school, for example, a school shooting or something, a counselor and a team of counselors are sent to the scene immediately to help people process that trauma. But for African Americans, when we became free, there was no counselor there for us. There was no fund there for us. That horse and that promise of that land, we didn't have anything. And so not only did we not have anything, you have this Reconstruction era in which things seem like they're getting better. We're starting to get voting rights. We're starting to get all these things. And then there's a bargain made that ends Reconstruction, that basically removes those soldiers, those troops, that protection from the South. And we're pretty much set back again. And so for African Americans, there has never been true liberation. We talk about this being the third Reconstruction now. The reason we keep having to have a Reconstruction era is because nothing has really changed. And so we are continuing. I used to hear people say when I was younger, this struggle for freedom. And I thought it sounded so negative, but it truly is an ongoing struggle for freedom. And so we have to deal with our mental health. We have to keep our minds clear. And I would even say, from a personal perspective, I was pretty emotionally drained recently. I had to kind of step back from social media and kind of, just remove myself a bit. And then we had this wonderful Juneteenth program. And, I think we started really channeling the energy of the ancestors and talking about the fight for freedom. And it kind of re-energized me. And so I think we go through times where our mental health might be off and we might get off track. But the point is to always come back to the center and to also allow yourself that time just to be away. Even in a football game, you don't play the whole game. You're going to always take some time and sit on the sideline, regroup, and come back. And so I hope that we challenge ourselves to take that time out and take care of our mental health in the process.
I love that. That was great. I love it, just to be able to get away. And that is very, very, very important. And it sounds like it's more of a trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma, just year after year, one thing after another. It's generational, it's hereditary, you name it. We don't even know why we're feeling that way. And just to kind of go back to what Ms. Tamika said earlier, you shared with us that you had a 21-year-old son, and you said his father is no longer with us. So how did that affect you mentally, as far as, even with your son? How were you able to cope?
I mean, it's been a challenge, First of all, the way he died was very, very horrific. He was shot, and first of all, he was beaten for a certain period of the day, while the men that he was living with were trying to get him to admit to stealing drugs. And so they tortured him basically throughout the day. And then he was taken to a secluded area and shot twice, and he was thrown off of an embankment. He stayed there for 2 weeks before a white lady who was walking her dog happened to see his sneakers. The dog started barking at his shoes, and I guess he got caught onto some branches going down. And he was found there, and we were never able to give him a proper funeral. We were never able to see him. And it's funny because when you talk about trauma, even to today, there are moments when there's a knock at the door and your mind kind of goes to, what if he shows up? What if he hasn't been dead? What if he wasn't
Uh-oh, looked like her connection. We lost her connection. She'll join us back in. Natasha?
Yes. Yeah, I think she lost her connection. And that it was getting so good. I hope she remembers that point. Wasn't it getting good, guys? It was getting so good.
Very good. I was about to lean in on this one.
I'm rebuking that spirit right now of internet disconnectivity right now. Amen. Amen. But okay, so guys, we're gonna. I want some more of that, so I'm hoping she can jump back in and jump back on. But definitely, guys, I think that you guys are sharing some very good things, and I think that a lot of times it's critical and it's important for us to just kind of be transparent with people and transparent about things that are going on. And so I'm gonna let Vicky go into the next question. You wanna tackle that one, Vicky? Or?
Before we do, I want to just kind of touch on a few of the stories that our panelists shared. And again, thank you guys for being transparent. And definitely when Ms. Tamika joins us back, I want her to finish her story. But one of the things too, we're such a resilient people that we keep going and going and going and going and going. Then we get an autopilot. And before we know it, we've incurred burnout. And, ironically, WHO, which is the World Health Organization, since last year, officially made a medical condition for burnout. Okay. And so that's where folks kind of lose hope. They lose their energy, they just lose a lot, and they have to be able to regroup. Like Dr. Ashley shared, a lot of times you got to get to the bench so that you can regroup and get your energy back. So, we got to remember burnout is key. Hey, Tamika.
I just decided I would just come over here and jump in my son screen. Sorry, we improvise. Black women know how to work it out. So I was just saying that when I think about also when you talk about the trauma, that one of the things that definitely impacts me is the number of women that are in this club with me. I was 19 years old. Well, no, I was actually 21 years old at the time when my son's father was murdered. And the thing that really impacted me was all the phone calls that I would receive from family members and friends, basically saying that they too had lost their child's father, or people telling me about cousins that I grew up with that had been shot and killed. And I didn't realize it. I was young, I was living my life and I wasn't necessarily paying attention. But as I began to hear those stories, the difference with me and sometimes, and some other people, but there are a lot of people who are like me, is that my trauma made me move to action. I knew at that point that I had to get myself really engaged in this work. And whereas when I was very young, I was involved because my parents were taking me. They were kind of dragging me along and, forcing me to be a part of the work. But when when this experience happened, the movement became my own. I began to understand the correlation between poverty and the lack of resources and the lack of opportunity in our communities, and how this happened to Jason. And so that all of that trauma that Black people and that Black women have to deal with in terms of losing their child's father, believing it could happen to you at any moment, and then having to carry it and carry the community on your back, but then having a son and knowing that it could actually happen to him as well. Because I know many people in this gun violence fight that have lost their two sons or their father, nephew, and another person. The gun violence struggle is one that Black people suffer in a real way. Mm-hmm. And as I said, I think that the trauma can't be minimized because it's certainly one that impacts not just us, but our entire community. My family has been impacted by it. And I'll say this last thing, because I know I'm talking too long, but the other piece is that my son, all of these years, he's been fine. And the last two Father's Day,
June, on Father's Day, he's been extremely depressed all the way. He didn't until he was 19 years old. It didn't impact him. And I thought that we were in the clear. And now we're dealing with something that he is really carrying a heavy load because he doesn't have his father.
Wow.
And so how are you guys adjusting right now with that? I know he's an adult now, right? 21?
He's 21. So it wasn't until he turned about 19 that he started asking questions, wanting to see more pictures, going to his grandmother's house. And, when he would go to his grandmother's house and he started to go through her files. He just wanted to know, like, what was my dad's hair like?
Wow.
He wanted to know just things that made me feel so low. I'm just being honest. Like, I couldn't, I couldn't even explain it or help him understand. And I realized at one point that I had done all that I could do as a mother, and that he was in a space when he needed his father. Like, that's what he was dealing with, that there comes a point in a man's life, in a young man's life, when they can only go, when a woman could go but so far. And yes, we're still there. We still can offer, there's love, there's all of that. But there's a need for a father, for that male figure. Yeah. And he began to recognize that. And at that point, that was one of the lowest points that I've had, because I realized no other man, no other situation, there was nothing that I could do to take the place of his dad, and his grandfather my father being very present in my life became something that I don't think he was jealous, but he certainly looked at it and said to me, "You don't understand what it is that I'm going through."
Wow.
That's interesting. So at this point, I mean, I'm just curious, and I'm not trying to get in your business or anything, but with everything that's going on, like, I know it's been years since that's happened, but how are you guys managing what's happening now? There's got to be like some maybe, I don't know, I don't want to say the wrong therapeutic word. There's got to be something more like every time I cut on social media, every time I turn on the news, I made a pledge to not watch the news for 3 days, because everything I see is another man getting killed, and then they're all different colors now. They're just killing everybody out here. And it's not just the police, there's shootings, cars blowing up, you name it. And so, how does that balance out with what we have going on now? Historically, what happened in your family with you as a mother, and then you have a African-American son that's going out here every day. Like, how are you able to manage and just stay stable?
And I want to add too, Tamika, right? I know you're getting ready to answer that, but that's also one of the concerns, because you're giving so much of yourself for all of us, that you look at the package that you have on your back, and then also, as you mentioned, the intimate part of, you have a son that, although he's 21, you still want to see, your grandkids, and you want to see all that life has to offer for him. And yet the world that we're in now is like the hope, and, what do you do, as Natasha mentioned, and I know you're getting ready to share with us, but, what do you do to rejuvenate that so that you can continue to fight this great fight? Because we need you out here. We need you and my son out here. We need, Until Freedom out here to continue to fight this great fight.
I mean, I think that for us, first of all, we don't manage it well, period. There have been moments that, we've experienced as a team, some very extreme situations. Last year, because of all the hell that I went through with a number of things, and particularly with the Women's March, I had to go to a PTSD program to try to gather myself. So we don't do well. I don't think any of the activists or leaders who are out here are as mentally stable as we would like. And we see that. We see it in suicides. We see it in conflict among groups, among leaders of organizations. when people look at them and say, oh, they're just being messy, or it's all about the money or whatever. It's not just that. It's also just a lot of internal turmoil and anger and frustration that comes out in the money discussion.
Right.
That comes out in a discussion about tactics, or people start attacking one another just because they don't really know of another way to communicate. And so I've experienced that. But what I will say about Until Freedom specifically, and what I would give as a recommendation, and really it's not a recommendation, it's imperative. It's something that you have to do, is to find people that you work with that love you, that you love as well. People that when you pour into them, they pour back into you, regardless of whether you're not perfect. None of us are perfect. We know that. We have issues. Everything that anybody else is going through, that's not an activist, not a leader, we go through the same exact things. We have man problems. We have family issues. We have, we fight with our kids. We don't like our sister sometimes, even though I love mine. But I'm just saying, I don't want her to be like, you don't like me? No. Our parents may disown us. Don't be trans and Black. You don't know what might happen to you, from your family's perspective. So we all go through some of the same things, but what makes Until Freedom very different is that we are a group of people who are committed not only to ourselves individually and to the brand of Until Freedom, which we are, but we're committed to everyone on our team's development individually and collectively. And we spend a lot of time figuring out how to make sacrifices, how to uplift and really just shine a light on and just make sure that people know that at times we step back. Like with me, just in this particular moment, my brand is whatever it is because people want to hear what I have to say. And I'm appreciative that God has given me a voice to speak from, for what I believe he would like for me to speak on and to speak to in people and in this moment. But I don't feel that I'm any more powerful or great than anyone else on my team. In fact, I would not have even been in Minneapolis making that speech if it had not been for attorney Angelo Pinto, who is one of our co-founders that saw the video and came and said, hey, we need to change directions and get to Minneapolis. So that's what makes us great, is that we follow one another's leadership and we believe in each other. And there is no one on this team that is trying to be more significant or important than the other.
Wow.
I think that's really important. That's definitely important.
And Natasha, I was going to add too, that, as you all are out here again fighting this great fight, and others are out here taking it to the streets, being very vocal, being very visible, being very diligent. Meanwhile, others are trying to, show that same energy on other levels, right? Because everybody's not anointed or graced to do the great work that a lot of you all are doing. But one thing I want to say, and this is a transparent moment, as we were building up for this particular event, and we had everything posted on social media, and, this is what you do, right? You want to let the community know what's to come. Well, some of the comments that we received weren't necessarily favorable, which was interesting. And I said, wow, a day in the life of what I know you all probably go through on a regular basis. And just that within the last 24 hours, how that impacted myself. And I didn't even want to share much of it with Miss Natasha because I didn't want her to go off. But, it just gave me an idea of when you're ready to fight this fight, you got to be ready to fight this fight because people are going to come for you.
You have to have tough skin, thick skin. And I've had to work with this one over here because he be ready to let a MF know, quick, fast, and in a hurry. I used to be like that. And you know what? Just as a quick story, one day I was in the train station with attorney Angelo Pinto, who's over there. You can't see him. And we were with my son. And this lady bumps into me. And my son is like, Mom, she bumped into you. What you gonna do? Which in my mind, I realized that I had taught him, I had taught him behavior, which was that if someone bumped into me or took my parking space or, you know, all the things that we get angry about, that I would go off. But in this particular moment, I had grown and he didn't know it. And so I had to tell him, hey, I'm not the same person that I was. And that lady, I said, honey, please let that lady go on. She could bump me again. And I wouldn't say a word. So we're all growing, but it takes time. And yeah, there's some people that don't like us. And guess what? We don't like them either. So we all it's all good. Don't worry about us. And we're not worrying about you. But we will still work on your behalf. And if you get shot and killed in the street, or if something happens to you, some level of injustice, whether I like you or not is not relevant. It's about the greater cause and the fact that we all need to be working towards a particular goal, which is the freedom of all our people. And in the situations that we're in, it's never a perfect victim. It's, you know, Breonna Taylor's family and Trayvon Martin's family, they're pretty perfect. They're pretty perfect. I mean, really, just in terms of everything that comes with them, and their desire to be in the fight. But we've had other families, you know, and as I'm thinking about it, we've had some great families, but there have been others that didn't like all of us, didn't want us to, you know, to speak or you know, why are you raising money, and how, you know, we're like, hey, we're traveling all the way down south to stand with you and your family. How are we supposed to get there? Oh, they stealing the money. Like, we've had it all. But guess what? In the end, the goal is that we're trying to go somewhere. And if we're going to get there, we've got to deal with all of the things, all of the stuff that comes with it on the way. And that's just the reality of it all.
Wow.
My son, are you getting better?
Yeah.
She said it.
Yeah, that's all.
She pretty much said it all. You know, we deal with what they call trolls nowadays. That's what they call trolls. And my thing is, you know, like she said, there's an entry point for everyone into this movement. You don't have to do what I do. You don't have to do what she do, but do something. You know, and if you're gonna be critical on somebody, then you should be doing something. If you're telling us, well, why y'all not doing this, then maybe you should start doing the thing that you're saying we're not doing. You know, so that's what it is for me. Like, I used to, like she's right, I used to get really angry and want to go back and forth. But now I realize, man, like, there's work to be done. Our people out here dying. You know, we died from COVID. We died from the police. We died from each other. We died from so many different things that I don't have time to go back and forth with somebody who's not doing anything. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't have the right to do nothing. If they doing nothing, then you're distracting me from doing work. So, you know, this is like, you're going to see a bunch of things. They talked about Jesus Christ, and they hung him. Mm-hmm. So the bottom line is, I ain't no better than Jesus Christ. So I expect whatever comes with it, and I just move in authenticity. I move with the pureness in my heart. I move for my people, and that's all I can do. Anything else is not in my control, man. And like she said, that's what Until Freedom is based off. It's based off family. You know, we organize this organization with people that we care for, that we would give our lives, our freedom, and everything for. And that's how we live our lives. So when we go on these front lines, we understand what's going to come. We understand that somebody is going to say something to us. We understand there's going to be agitators and people are going to be angry. But we also understand that regardless of that, we still got to do the work.
Yeah. And Natasha, I wanted to cross over too, because again, with Dr. Ashley, you know, maybe we can dig deep into these history books and kind of understand, you know, as a people, as we have shifted years, how has that, you know, because mental health has been upon us forever, right? But then we compound these external or extrinsic type of situations, it kind of amplifies, right? You know, tell us a little bit about that, you know, as far as we go back until now.
I'm sorry, I had a little bit of feedback. Could you repeat the last part of the question?
Yes, ma'am. I was just saying, kind of take us through, you know, as you've done your research and you've gained information about, you know, the history of African American studies, you know, like, how is it, you know, as we continue to move through all the impacts, all the external forces against us, you know, as a people, how have we kind of moved forward, because it's been upon us all our lives, since history, right? So take us from then to now. Has there been much of a change? Has there been much of a shift? Or are we kind of fighting the same battles and it just keeps reoccurring?
Well, I would say that there's been a lot of changes that have occurred. It's almost like, what is the saying? You walk how many ever steps forward and then you walk a few steps backwards.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's part of what we've experienced as African Americans in the United States, and even abroad. A lot of my work deals with the diaspora and people of African descent throughout the world. And you'll find that there is commonality in our struggles. I was really happy to see people of African descent over in Europe, specifically in Paris, who were marching for Black Lives Matter. They were marching in solidarity with African Americans. And you're starting to see this movement grow, not just in the United States, but even beyond. And it's growing because we are all experiencing very similar oppression and racism wherever we are. And so I wanted to go back and chime in a little bit as far as what they were saying about the movement and the different roles. I always tell my students that there's always room at the table for you to get involved. We have the organization that is out in the forefront. You all are doing great work, and I'm so appreciative of what you all are doing. We can support you all behind the scenes. In the classroom, my role is to educate those students and those people who are tuning into my class, to get them mentally prepared, to give them strategies. I think we have a lot of lessons in the past. And so I always challenge people who want to be involved in any way to make sure that we're looking at the past. What are some of those lessons that we can find in the work of the Black Panther Party, in the work of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, in the work of Sister Fannie Lou Hamer? We have to look back at the past. What did they experience? How did they respond to it? What are some things that we can see that went wrong? How can we change that and we can, make it better for ourselves? And so I think that a lot of our foundation should be to study the idea of Sankofa, looking back at the past to help us move into the present and the future. And so we have to do that and understand that we're in an age where a lot of people don't like to read. We have Twitter, we have a snapshot. My students are like, I want to read a portion of it. No, you're going to read the whole chapter. You're going to read the whole book. So, for example, a really good text, the Montgomery bus boycott and the women who started it. We read that every year in this particular class because they lay out the entire movement and every aspect of it. I mean, you have the people who were boycotting and protesting. You also have the women of the church who were selling chicken dinners and pies and cakes to raise money for people if they got arrested. You had the bus, or not the bus, but the carpool system, people who used their cars and went and organized and had maps and picked people up. So I think we have to look at those things when we think about organizing. When you think about the Montgomery bus boycott, that went over a year. I think it's 381 days. That's all 4 seasons. We're talking about snow, sleet, hot, rain, all of that, pollen. I hate pollen. But, they were committed to this movement. And so if we plan on being committed in that way, if we plan on moving and keeping it going, we have to look back at those things in the past and say, okay, well, how did they do that? How the heck did you organize a whole town full of people? How did you get everybody to stay off the bus? Yeah. You mean everybody? Can y'all even imagine everybody doing one thing at one
without
time?
social media?
Without social media. But they did it, and we can do it again. But we have to not be ignorant to the past. We have to embrace it and realize that we don't have to always reinvent the wheel. We're some creative people. We love, I'm going to make this new thing. I'm going to do this new org. I'm going to do this new thing. But there's so many times that we could do it better if we just learn from our elders and our ancestors and say, you know what? I like how they did that. And I think I can do it again in this context. but I'm gonna tweak a few things and I'm gonna see how successful it's gonna be. But a lot of times we're scared of it. And I think it also has to do with how history has been taught to us. We have learned history through facts and numbers. And I always teach history in a way that I'm telling a story. I can stand in front of my class and I'll just talk. And they'll say, oh, well, what notes was I supposed to take? Because I've said it in a way that it sounded like a story and not necessarily like, okay, 1822, you need to remember this date. Take all of that away and just remember the context of it. Remember the lessons, remember the people, remember what they did and how we can use that in the present. I think that we just need to get back to that. We need to read. We need to read and study.
And I agree, Dr. Ashley, and thank you for sharing that, because I think that we have to do the work also. A lot of times we get the cliff notes of something. We need to go back and do the research and to be able to make a sound decision for ourselves. We don't need to do what's popular on Facebook because it got X amount of thousands of likes.
Or we want the YouTube video.
Yeah.
It's not enough.
Yeah, it's not enough. And so, while we're trying to meet people where they are, we still have to go back and do the work. For example, and I'll admit I was in that pool of folks that up until the last couple of years, I didn't really understand what Juneteenth was about. Transparent moment for myself, but it wasn't taught to us in school. So, that's one of the key things that I would say that has come about, that we got to do the work. We got to do the research. And, that's how we can really make true change.
I agree with that 100%. And it's funny because y'all's president said that he made Juneteenth. Y'all's president said that he made Juneteenth popular. And in a way, we want to be like, we reject anything. Well, I let me not say we, but I reject any attempt that he makes to act as if he's uplifting our struggle and important moments in the Black experience. I don't agree with that at all. In fact, it was quite disrespectful to me that he would travel to Tulsa. Forget about Juneteenth, just traveling to Tulsa in general, being in that space and not understanding the pain that people have experienced there with the type of rhetoric that he carries and some of the policies and other things that he's engaged in that are directly in line with how Tulsa happened to our people. His policies at times are exactly what precipitated the behavior, that the attitude against Black people in Tulsa. They don't really want us to be successful. They don't really want us to thrive and to be independent of the system. They say they do, but that's not what's happening here. What's really happening is that communities are being broken and we're being split into two communities. Those who are striving for the 1% status and those who are not. And you and I, all of us know that the majority of our people are in the pool of those who are not. They're nowhere near 1% and probably will never be. And so that's my little rant on that. But just in terms of him saying that, he made Juneteenth popular, unfortunately, it's true because there were a lot of people, if you really want to be honest, that didn't know what Juneteenth was until he chose that as a rally location for his campaign. Mm-hmm. People didn't know. Now they do. So however we figure it out, whether it's trauma that happens to you and that's how you engage, whether you watched a video and decided you wanted to jump in, there's a space for you. And this movement has to be flexible enough to make room for everyone. But we also need to admit and to be comfortable from our community's perspective, saying not only are they not teaching it to us in schools, but we're not teaching it in our homes. Our children don't know.
Right. Wow. This is good. Look, I done threw my questions over to the side. We in it now. This is deep.
But I have a question, and I'm sorry, guys, but I just got to ask this. So I'm trying to ask it the right way. And I don't want to repeat what you said, but I kind of do, but I kind of don't. When what you said about Target, the department store, I don't know if you remember what you said about Target and AutoZone. and things of that nature. But while we're on here, because a lot of people that I've been talking to, they have mixed feelings about looting and what's been happening with the protesting and the looting. What is your take on the actual looting portion of it?
I don't have mixed feelings about looting. Looting isn't right. That's it. It's very simple. I'm just saying, don't try to start the conversation with me at looting and not at what caused the looting. That's all I'm saying. We need to, I'm saying that if we know that people were in their homes sheltering in place, like let's just remember that, because we went to Minneapolis, a whole lot of stuff wasn't even open. It was closed down. People were sheltering in place. So the fact that folks made it to the street happened because something caused pain and trauma in them, and they went outside. Now, what happens is that when you have all these folks out in the street marching and protesting and everything that's going on, and folks find ways to cause chaos and confusion. And there are some people that show up and say, well, I'm so glad everybody's marching out here because I'm going to go into Target and steal some stuff in the name of the movement. And so what I said is that when you arrest the police officers responsible for killing George Floyd, then what happens is that the righteous protesters could go home and relax their nerves. You know, we can fight in a different way. We don't have to be in the street marching because we see that there's some form of justice. And then you can find out who the robbers are. But you ain't going to be able to tell the difference between any of it right now when everybody is outside at the same time because there has been no justice. I mean, so people can try to say all they want. Oh, Tamika is saying that looting is okay. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I'm not willing to have a conversation about looting at the Target when you haven't talked about the looting that's happening to Black people and the fact that we are starving for resources. And so when there's chaos, maybe we're going to go get some stuff out of the Target. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying that's a fact.
Definitely. I totally agree. It's just, I just find it that a lot of people, they say, I support Black Lives Matter. I support that. And so they have, it's a lot of, when I say mixed feelings, I'm talking about from other people in the community and things of that nature. So,
I mean, all I would say is, and my son could speak to this, like, don't put looting on Black Lives Matter. That's not, you know, before Black Lives Matter existed, people looted. And by the way, again, when we go back and look at any moment in history where protests have happened, there have always been detractors. We've seen at Wendy's, it was some white women that burned down the Wendy's, right? They know that. They arrested the woman or two women or something like that. And when we were in Minneapolis, the liquor store, the white people went in there and got all the liquor. We saw them going down the street. They were handing out bottles to people. So don't put that on Black Lives Matter.
I like that.
That's right.
I like it. That's true. And I think that's something, because they were showing a lot of clips and things of that nature connected to that. So definitely, I think that's key. And so with all of the statues and things like that coming down at this point, I've noticed that number 40, what is it? 46, 45, 45, 42. 49. Which number is it, y'all?
Dude. We call him Dude.
Okay, him. So he's having statues put back up and things of that nature and passing bills in regards to that. So how do you guys feel about those statues?
I mean, I say put them in a museum. They don't have to be out in public like that. You should have a choice to go and see them if you want to, if they're so worried about the history. But it doesn't need to be out in the common area. I think take them down.
I say, for me, is that we are the only people in the world where we live at, they celebrate the people who slaughtered us. And no other nationality, no country, nothing is in China. They don't have pictures of the generals from Hiroshima. You know, the Jews don't have celebrations of the people who committed the Holocaust. There's no Hitler thing there. So it's just not common sense. So when you talk about, oh, this is the history of America, then you should be ashamed of the history of America. You should talk about, put up some pictures of Nat Turner, replace them with Nat Turner and Rosa Parks and, and Marcus Garvey, with people who fought against being oppressed. Those are people who should be celebrated, not the ones who oppressed and killed and murdered hundreds of millions of people. Not at all.
Yeah, and I come from I'm torn a little bit in my mindset around this, because I feel like there's been conversations about taking J. Edgar Hoover's name off the FBI building, but the attitude of J. Edgar Hoover exists inside the building. The evilness is still there, ingrained in the institution. So you can take the name off, and perhaps some would say that would help with, cleaning out and clearing out the space. So I support that. But as far as I'm concerned right now, and I think that there is a need for those institutions to be changed, those statues to come down. So I'm not in any way saying, because everybody has their thing that they're fighting for, and I support all movements, and that needs to happen, and I support it 100%. But I also know that some of these governors, like in Mississippi, that's signing bills to change the Confederate flag. Guess what, bruh? You need to close Parchman Prison also, because almost 50 prisoners have died recently in their prison because of poor conditions. And Parchman Prison is on a former plantation where people were enslaved. So you can take the flag down, but the flag mentality has to also be cleared out of the institutions.
Right. And go ahead, Dr. Ashley.
I was going to say, I have mixed feelings on that, because in some instances, okay, so a few months ago, or maybe it might have been over a year ago, I know at UNC Chapel Hill, there was a statue that they were considering taking down, but then they wanted to spend millions of dollars to create a building to house the statue. And so I'm like, okay, so you're going to take the statue down, and then you're going to spend millions of dollars to house the statue. And so you're going to give this statue, you're going to give all of these resources to the statue and just having it there. But, that within itself is problematic, because, I think it was mostly African-American students that were demanding it being taken down. I would rather see the money being put into the Black Student Union rather than millions of dollars being spent rehousing a statue. But there are some instances in which I do agree. Like, for example, Florida is now replacing their statue that they have in the Capitol. Each state gets 2 statues in the Capitol, and they're replacing their Confederate general with Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune's statue. I totally agree with that, because she will be the first African-American woman to represent a state. I don't know what they're planning on doing with the other statue, but I actually agree with that move. Yes, put Ms. Bethune in the Capitol, exactly where she belongs. She founded a school here. She founded National Council of Negro Women, co-founder of United Negro College Fund. Yes, she deserves to be there. Confederate general, no, take him out. So I guess it's a case-by-case scenario for me. And I also have issues with the erasure of history, because in some of these little small towns and even big towns where these statues are, they represent the culture of the town. And so I don't know that when I see the statue, I know where I'm at. Like, okay, I know exactly where I am right now. Okay, cool. In some instances, statues were put in places where the Confederacy had no battles or anything. You have the daughters of the Confederacy who went and put these statues in different places to try to change the narrative. And so they're historically inaccurate in certain places. So I would say case by case. And the last thing I'm going to say is I know that there's also a push to change some of the military bases, the names. I think that I think those are historically accurate. They should just stay. I mean, whatever happened there is what happened there. So it's case by case for me. But as Sister Tamika said, I support whatever movement, whatever people feel is going to create change to them. But I think that I don't want that to be the end of the change.
And Dr. Ashley, thank you for that, because, I think it helps round off everybody's different opinions about historical pieces of things. But as we kind of fast forward and look at what we've been protesting for, and I think that some people are gaining some type of peace about the small victory, right? So this is making some headway. Never has this happened before. So at least we can say, okay, these are small victories, right? How do we move from protest to power? And I know this week, Mr. Masson has to break away because he has to share with us Until Freedom. Share with us, how do we move from the protest to power? That's what everybody wants to know.
Yeah. I mean, I think that what happened in Louisville, Kentucky is one way to describe that protest to power movement. Although Breonna Taylor's murderers still have not been charged, and they need to be, and we're going to stay on it until that happens. But there was something else significant that that took place, and that was the passing of Breonna Taylor's law, which is the banning of no-knock warrants. And as we all know, it was a no-knock warrant that was being executed by those officers who showed up at her home and were unwilling to announce themselves properly, which therefore caused Kenny Walker to fire a warning shot, which it was well within his rights. It is legal that if you feel that you are in danger in your own home, you have the right to fire a warning shot. We know that those two things can't exist. The two laws contradict one another, because if you can fire that warning shot, but yet it is going to create a barrage of bullets coming at you because the officers are now feeling that they're in danger, something is wrong. And so the people who were protesting locally in Louisville started working and have been working, but they really started to focus on it. And want to give a shout out to a sister by the name of Katura, who works for the ACLU there in Louisville. They began to work really hard to get Breonna Taylor's law passed so that no-knock warrants would be banned. And when we did, I was involved in the entire Until Freedom team, worked on a PSA that we did with Cardi B and Alicia Keys, Rhapsody, Queen Latifah. I mean, the list goes on. Gabrielle Union, so many women got involved and used their voices to help push for justice for Breonna Taylor. But one of the action items that I give in the PSA is for Louisville residents specifically to call their city council members and tell them to vote for Breonna Taylor's law, to vote to ban no-knock warrants. Some people said, well, why don't you just have everyone call? Because the more calls that go through and you blow up their telephones, then that should, make them feel encouraged and move them. But actually, that's not true. When you're talking about legislators and getting them to push a particular bill, you need to tell them, I live on this street in your community, and I voted for you, or I donated to you, and I have expectation that you will do XYZ thing. That's where your power really comes in, from a local level. So I would just say, when you talk about gaining power, that people have to understand that you can't protest and don't vote. The two things don't go together. We have to make sure that we are on the ground, but that we're also in the ballot box, making sure that our voices are being heard from all spectrums, because that is truly moving us from protest to power. Thank you all so much. They're going to kill. If you could see, there's a going, please, gotta go. Much love to you, and thank you so much.
Stay blessed and keep doing self-care. Okay, stay well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Pretty much, I mirror what she just said. Protest to power. I say all the time, protest. I mean, power succeeds nothing without a demand. And you have to come with demands. Just going out protesting and you don't know what you're demanding makes no sense. And that's what we do as activists. We come with we have an inside-outside game. We have elected officials in which we elect and we put into positions. So when they need us, we've been to Albany when they were talking about the raise the age law, and we had to go there in the middle of the night to sit in there with the Congress and all of these officials and say, hey, we need this law passed. We had to come in the middle of the night and say this law has to be passed because you can't keep charging 16-year-old kids as adults. So it's about being strategic. It's about being understanding what it is. It's about passion, but it's also about being smart and intellectual and just knowing your role. Us as activists, we push them, and then we get the local officials to push the pen. So I appreciate you guys.
No problem. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you guys, and stay safe and stay well.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. This was a beautiful conversation. I wish I could stay for 2 more hours, but they're about to kill us. So
No problem. No problem. No problem. We're going to wrap up with Dr. Ashley. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
All right. Stay blessed.
So, Dr. Ashley, you're the historian in the group. So now, yes. Now, what do we want? I mean, I know we're out here marching. We're doing everything. I mean, I got my shirt on. Look, got my shirt on. Everything, you know, rapping the city. But at the end of the day, what do we want? I heard somebody say the other day, and I don't know, you know, but they said they wanted 40 acres and a mule. And I'm like, okay. So what do we want? What's the common thread here?
I think we all want true liberation. And I think that looks differently for different people. You know, we want to be able to drive down the street without being pulled over and being murdered.
Right.
We want to be able to raise our kids in a community without being fearful that our child is going to go outside and play with a toy, gun, perhaps, and get killed. You know, we want to live in a place that we can be free, that we don't have to be judged by our color. You know, we want liberation. And I don't think at this moment we have one solid goal for everyone, because I think it looks different in different places. I think it looks different in different states, in different cities, it looks different. But I think that we have to come together and get organized in our particular places and decide what we want. Because I see a lot of movement, I see a lot of things happening, I see a lot of people fired up, but there has to be someone or some people that come together and say, okay, what are we going to do with this energy? We're all excited. We're all ready. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to do something. Okay, so what do we want after this? I think it takes a lot of organizing. I think it takes a lot of studying. I think it takes a lot of just people coming together and realizing that, you know, as a people, we can put our differences aside, even religious differences. We can put sexual preference aside. I mean, we can come together and say, you know, this is the overarching theme for what we want. And it looks different to different people. So I think we just have to come together and decide what it is we want. Some of us want reparations. Some of us say, oh, reparations, that's a dumb idea. I don't want that. I want my reparations, FYI, if they start.
I do too. I want all of it. I want everything the Cankerworm stole.
I want it. The stimulus checks let me know that it's possible. I said, oh my gosh, everybody?
Yeah.
Everybody.
No,
and
everybody. Everybody.
Well, not everybody. Not everybody. But, you know, most people were able to get them. And so I think it just takes some organizing. I keep saying that word because I think that that's key at the end of the day. If you look at movements of the past, if you look at the SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, formed in 1960, you had students from different HBCUs who came together to Raleigh, and they sat down and they decided that we're going to create an organization. And one of the great things that I love about SNCC is that it was group leadership. So we don't have that charismatic leader in the forefront the way they did with Dr. King and all of them. Everybody took their own role. Everybody went back to their own school and said, okay, this is what we're going to do in our particular area. So you have one charge at the top as far as creating change, and then everybody in their different particular areas and their regions are coming together to make sure that that change is happening. So I think it just takes us getting on one accord in the sense, but realizing that it doesn't have to be monolithic. It doesn't have to be like exactly the same in every place. So I think those are the things. I will always encourage people to read and study 2 books or a few books that I always say. The New Jim Crow, which looks at mass incarceration. That book really changed my life. It's by Michelle Alexander.
Read that. That's a great book.
It's phenomenal. Miseducation of the Negro by Dr. Carter G. Woodson, the founder of Black History Month. That's like the Black Bible for me. And then lastly, a book called We Will Shoot Back by Akinyele Umoja. who looks at self-defense among African Americans. Everybody wasn't saying, hey, I don't want to carry a gun. There were people who organized, the Deacons for Defense, who came together and said, you know, if they come, this is what we're going to have. We don't mean to be violent, but we're also protecting ourselves. And I think that those are options, and those are things that people should explore in this day and age. So I would just say the next thing that we need to do is make sure that we're studying, that we're getting ready to be in these movements. If you're a basketball player, you will always know who Michael Jordan is. You will also always study the game. When you're not in the game, you're watching film about the game because you want to make sure that you're ready the next time that you go in.
Do you think that we need a leader? I mean, organization is key, and that's important. But you know, we got all over the places different people that's putting together chapters, Black Lives Matter chapters of different things. But do you think that we need a leader, like a true spokesperson, or are we doing it the right way right now, where we're just rallying together in every state or every city? Do you think we need a leader, like our face, for this movement that can actually speak to and represent us on the mainstream?
Well, Natasha, I wanted to add real quick. I think we do need some type of leader. I like what Dr. Ashley said about we need our modern day Martin Luther King Jr. I think that is a parallel. So while we need a leader, we also need balance. And it brings me right back to the mental health aspect of things. You know, there was a reason why we didn't jump right in and do this segment right away in the midst of everything that was going on, because there was a lot of emotion going on. Social media was blowing up. It was overwhelming, to be honest with you. We just was coming off of the initial phase 1 of coronavirus into half of phase 2, only to be thrown back to phase 1.5, I guess. And then all this happened. And so, you know, we got to maintain that level of mental wellness while we are also trying to continue to fight the fight. So whether we have that face, that main person, we also have to make sure we remain well while we support that main person.
Well, I mean, as far as needing a leader, so I was given 2 examples. I was given an example of those who were kind of like followers of Dr. King, whereas he was a charismatic leader who was in the forefront. And then you also had organizations like the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, everybody calls them SNCC. You had group-centered leadership. And so with group-centered leadership, you have all of these people who are in this one organization. And of course, there is a charge for the entire organization, but you have people going back to their individual schools and their different areas who are taking the charge and who are kind of interpreting it for themselves and what is needed in that particular area. So for me personally, do I think there is a need for a leader? I think that there is need for leadership. And I think we all need to look at ourselves as leaders, because when you look at yourself as a leader, you become more accountable, you become more responsible, you become more driven. And I think we need more of that and less of, I think people have a tendency to just wait. Oh, we was waiting on President Obama. We was waiting on this person. We waiting on the next Dr. King. There will never be another Dr. King. There will never be another Malcolm X. And I could talk about why there will never be. But I would just say that we all we need to be. There's enough out there that we need to look at their lives and say, you know what? There's a part of his work that I can do. There's something that I can take from that, and I can implement that in my community. Because as they said earlier, there's enough work for all of us, but we need to all just do that work ourselves, start our own nonprofit, start our own go volunteer in our communities, use our voices to speak out against legislation. You know, there's all different kinds of roles. Even as I said, the women of the church making chicken dinners and selling them so that they could support the movement. Who knew Aunt such and such potato salad was good enough to support a movement? But it did. So that's how we find our place.
Okay. I think that's awesome. I'm just curious, like I've been hearing so often, and I've been hearing that, you know, this is how long is it going to last? We have America, we have the whole world's attention right now. And it's like, how long is this going to last? Like, are we going to mess it up? Is somebody going to do something and blow it for us, and then we're going to go right back to the same thing? Or are people doing stuff because they don't want us to break anything or blow anything up again? Or, how long are we going to have their attention, and how long are we going to be able to move the government, move leadership in charge? How long before it stops? I mean, and it's almost like we have that mindset right now, and a lot of people have that mindset that it's always been negative endings to a lot of things for us anyway. So it's like, how long before they change their mind or before they stop doing things for us? So what are your thoughts on that?
I think that as long as we continue, I think it's like when you go to the car lot, right? They bring you the first offer and you're like, ooh, if you jump on that offer and you take that, that's going to be the end of it. But I think that we can't afford to take the first offer. We can't afford to take the symbolism. We can't afford to take the little trinkets. We need to decide that we want to continue to press on until we get exactly what we want. And so I think that it's all up to us at this point. I mean, I can't believe I'm seeing this in the middle of a global pandemic. I heard a lady say the other day, she was out protesting. She said, I would rather die out in these streets than in my house.
Wow.
It moved me because I said, wow, this is where we are. So this is what it took for us to get to this place. And I'm just hoping that people don't let up.
Definitely. I agree. I totally agree. I want to keep pressing. I've never seen such an impact of the way that people are getting together and all just coming together. And they're all different colors. And that's the one thing that I'm actually proud of America for, is coming together. Not everybody, but the ones that are,
The globe came together. It wasn't just. I think, as I mentioned in our last Gravity Talk, this was a different movement because we had global support. And I think that's the voice that the government needed to hear. So if for such a time as this, I think you're right. I think there is a small window of opportunity that we need to be able to make sure we're seizing. And it does come with organization and structure. I think that as we have moved through the emotional part of it, because that's the normal phase. Initially, when everything popped off, we had a right to be frustrated. We had a right to be upset. We had a right to be angry. Okay. We had a right to express ourselves the best way we knew how. And now we have a right to act, and we have a right for change. So what does that look like? I think a lot of people have different ideas of what that looks like. I love what you said about a group coming together, but we all know a lot of times groups are hard to make decisions, because everybody thinks differently. But I pray that we can continue with the momentum that we are gaining, but not lose momentum, and actually get some more work done. So that's my prayer.
Definitely. I think it's time to bring things full circle, guys. Definitely think it's time. We've been chit-chatting, and I think we could go on for another 4 hours, to be honest. It's so much.
This will be a part two. This will be a part two, Natasha. We're gonna have a part two.
Definitely. So while we have you on here, Dr. Ashley, when we can do part two, will you participate? We're asking you in front of the whole world, globally.
Wow. Yeah, I'm open. I'm here.
Boom.
All right, so we got one in. Okay, so yeah, we called you out. We do that sometimes in front of everybody so that they'll remind you as well. But to go full circle is this last moment where you get to give your shout out. We definitely want to hear about some of the literature that you've written or your next projects that's coming up. But also, full circle is your summary of what you gathered from what we talked about today, and also one message that you would like to leave with all of our viewers and those that plan on viewing later, from moving from protest to power. So we'll start with you, Dr. Ashley.
I think one of the things that I got out of this conversation is that in the midst of everything that's going on, because there's a lot that's going on, we have to take care of our mental health. We have to make sure that we are well. If you've ever been on a plane, they always tell you, and it sounds like it doesn't make sense when they say it, because of course we want to save those around us. We want to save our children first. They say, take your mask Put your mask on first before you try to save anyone. And I think we're in a time where we have to make sure that every day when we wake up, when we say our prayers, when we brush our teeth, we have to make sure that we are checking on our mental health too, to stay in this struggle for freedom. You know, we can only be as good to others as we are to ourselves. And I think that there's a lot of work that we can do. There's a lot of work that we are going to do as a people, and we just have to be ready for it. And if for any reason you need to go on the sideline and regroup, give yourself that grace also, because the work is going to be there. And I think that we are moving in a positive direction. I'm so proud to see everything that's going on, to see that people are engaged, involved, people that I've never seen involved before in this struggle, people that I've never even knew they knew anything that was going on around them. They're posting, I'm going down to the protest. I got my sneakers on. You know, people are ready to go. And this is positive. This is great. This is the moment that we've all been waiting on. And I don't feel like we're going to blow it. I don't, because it's too serious. It's too serious to see people out risking their lives in coronavirus for freedom. That's real. That's real deep. You know, so I think that this is good. I think the energy is good. I think it's positive, and I'm really excited to see where things go. And I know that 40 years from now, 30 years from now, we're going to look back on this moment, and we're going to talk about this just like we talk about the civil rights movement, just like we talk about the Black Power movement. This is one of those moments because the energy just feels very different. And so I'm excited to see where it's going. As far as books, as I said, The Miseducation of the Negro is always good. The New Jim Crow is phenomenal. And I would just say to tap into some of those scholars that you see around you. We are available. We are on Instagram. We're on social media. I'm the Legacy Keeper on Instagram, and I'm always posting something historical. So I thank you all, and I'm just so grateful to be on this panel with you.
Awesome. What's the name of your book that you wrote?
Oh, my book, I have 3, but 2 are memoirs. But the first one was Mary McLeod Bethune in Florida, Bringing Social Justice to the Sunshine State. It looks at the life and activism of the founder of Bethune-Cookman University. She's also the founder of National Council of Negro Women. And she was pretty much like the Oprah of her time. I mean, She was a very powerful woman, worked with 4 different United States presidents. So I've gotten a chance to work in her home in DC and also her home in Daytona Beach. And so it looks at her activism, lots of lessons for the present.
All right. Awesome. Full circle for you, Vicki.
All right. Well, one of the hashtags that we've been sharing through our post is reclaiming our time. And I know Miss Maxine was well known for her stating that in session one time. So, you know, the time is now, and I feel that we have to make sure we can transition from protest to power. And we have to have a clear plan in doing so while we maintain our mental wellness, because that's key. One thing that Dr. Ashley mentioned about the mask and the airplane, and that's a scenario that I've used in the past as well. We have to make sure we're straight first before we can help anyone else. And again, that's one of the reasons why when everything first came about, it took us a minute to put together this particular panel because we wanted it to be impactful. We wanted to reflect a sense of power, and we wanted to have some type of action. So, you know, while everyone, you know, we were all talking and expressing ourselves about what was going on at the current time, I'm solution focused. And so I wanted to ensure that we were able to do something and bring something to our streaming family that would be solution focused. The what now is what our goal was for today. And so again, as we continue to embark on making change and making impactful change, that we maintain our mental wellness, because that's key. I wanted to also leave you all with, please take a look at the Mental Health America websites. They have self-help tools that will allow you to take screening assessments for depression, anxiety, PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, different things to that nature, so that you can kind of do a self-check to determine whether or not you need to take another step to seeking professional help. So I want to make sure that people are aware of those types of resources that are also out here. Also, again, there's other self-wellness things that we can continue to do as we continue to fight against coronavirus and as we continue to fight against racism, societal injustice, systemic injustice, all of the above. And so you want to make sure that you are getting your rest, that you're eating well, that you're doing some type of exercise, that you are going outside and enjoying this fresh air, that you have to continue to employ self-care in order to continue to be any good for yourself and also the movement in general. So I just wanted to leave you all with that, and thank you all for the opportunity and supporting us with our Gravity Talks, and so we can continue to be a voice for the people.
Thank you. And just to close us out, guys, one thing I want to say is thank you, world. Thank you, world, everyone that's been pushing and been marching, protesting with us, standing with us, going public, saying that they believe that Black Lives Matter. And I definitely a firm believer that all lives will matter once Black Lives Matter. And so we thank you for your support. I want to encourage everybody to keep pushing and let this thing continue to go viral and spread. We thank you all for tuning in. Part 2 is coming really, really soon. Keep your head up. Stay safe out there, guys. But let's keep pushing and keep pressing. You guys have an awesome, awesome day. We thank you so much. Thank you. See you guys until next time.
Thank you. And just so you all know, on Monday is when we launch the rest of our July series. We'll have Mental Health in Sports. Mental Health in Sports Part 2. So that will be on Monday at 7 p.m. It'll be a new day and a new time for a continuous project or segment that we featured last month. I believe it was back in May that we did Mental Health in Sports Part 1. So please join us, Mental Health in Sports Part 2, Monday live at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Y'all stay blessed. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.